Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Workforce Rewired, the podcast that Catapult hosts with CEOs around our communities that are doing some really interesting things and finding new ways to work in today's workplace. And I am thrilled today to be joined by Melissa Hovey, who is the Executive Director of Share Charlotte. And as you can see from her graphic in the background, Share Charlotte is all about powering social good in the community. And they have a really interesting story that I'd love to have Melissa share with us, how you've evolved the organization. And then particularly, I want to talk about doing good for our own employees and our communities. So Melissa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Excited to hear about this. So tell our listeners a little bit about Share Charlotte.
Happy to. So Share Charlotte was started by a woman in the community a little over 12 years ago who was just trying to volunteer with her family. She would Google nonprofits and volunteering and end up with the really big organizations, and she really wanted to help a more mid-sized grassroots nonprofit. So she just decided to make her own website where every nonprofit could come on the site for free and have a Cliff Notes version of how the community could support them, how to donate, volunteer, shop their Amazon wish list, or attend their events. She just wanted to democratize philanthropy and make it super simple for every Charlottean to be able to find nonprofits to support. So we started with 87 nonprofits when we launched, and now we're at over 680 that serve Mecklenburg County. And in 2018, the platform went national, so we're in there's 9 other share communities across the US and growing.
That is such a fantastic story. And I love that it started right here in the Queen City. We're always doing good work in the Queen City. And I think I was at an event this morning talking about the uniqueness of our community and public-private partnerships. And I think there's no better example of that when you bring together nonprofits at the center. So congratulations and thanks for all the work you're doing for the community.
Thank you.
One of the things we hear from
Awesome.
our member organizations is that culture matters, and culture is often defined by how do you take care of your employees. And so I guess the thing I would ask you from the vantage point you sit in, there's a lot of companies and a lot of people who say they want to do good, and they want to do good by their employees, and they want to do good by their communities. In your mind, what separates a company that actually does it from one that just talks about it?
Right. Yes, very easy to talk about it. Number one, I would say they put resources. Volunteering and getting involved and engaging in community takes resources. It takes time. It takes somebody focused on it and dedicated to it. Not all companies have that, and it's a lot of shapes and sizes, but putting people and money against it pays really big dividends. What we've seen is 93% of employees that volunteer are more engaged at work. And then you see the magic that happens when people volunteer next to each other, that team building that happens. I'd say the second thing that separates these companies is they measure it. So companies with metrics that are aligned to their corporate purpose saw 25% higher median revenue and 22% higher pre-tax profits than others that don't. And doing good is not just nice to have, it really is a strategic driver of growth, not only for employees and engagement, but you think about this is the community you live in. If you don't give back, if you don't contribute to this, what company are you building and what community is surrounding it?
I think those are fascinating statistics. And I want to talk about the one of 93% or 94% more engagement, one of those high 90s. And as you were talking, I was reflecting, I was at an event last night for the best employers in North Carolina. And proud plug, Catapult landed on the list for the second year in a row. But one of the things I know, yay for us, we also had about 20 members of Catapult that were honored, which is also really exciting for us to see. But one of the statistics that they mentioned is that only 30% of employees are actually engaged in their workplaces. But in North Carolina, amongst those that were ranked as the best employers, there was an average of 94% engagement. And so I think that speaks to leaders doing good and engaging their people in their work, but also in their community around them. So if you're going to give advice to a leader to start with their own people or to start with their community, where's your advice?
Well, I think I see two camps of companies. Sometimes it's like volunteerism and giving back is very employee led, and sometimes it's a very tops down approach. And I think the best companies have a mix of both. I think it's important to acknowledge where employees want to give their time and passion. I always say, like, everyone's been affected by a nonprofit at some point in their life. Like, whether it's a grandmother that went through cancer treatment and a nonprofit helped them, or you donated to Goodwill, it's touched your life at some point. And so everyone's passionate about something. So it's important to harness that passion. But I think it's also important for companies to leverage this, their community investment, as a branding opportunity and a way to showcase what's important to them. So if a technology company invests in STEM and STEM programming for kids, you are training your future workforce. So I think the best companies have a blend of both employee-led as well as company priorities, and where they can meet in the middle is, I think, where the magic happens.
Love that example that you've provided. And because I think so many times people say, well, we're going to buy free lunch on Friday for your employees. That's our version of doing good. What do
Yeah.
you think really is the hallmark and the model of what doing good looks like when it's really done well?
I think it's when it's done consistently. I think people just like tap in and do it one time, or around the holidays, it's a toy drive and it's very transactional. It's not super engaged or thoughtful. So I think it's really important that you're listening to your employees and you're making sure you're responding to those needs, and that it's consistent, it's measured, it's a tops down approach. I think everything starts with leadership. And so if it's not driven from leaders and they don't see leaders out there volunteering or saying that this is important, or we're really paying attention, we really want you to give back, that's where I see things fails. Another stat I always like, so 71% of companies are using volunteerism as a way to unite their workforce, and 70% of employees believe that volunteerism is more likely to boost employee morale than a happy hour. So save your money, like for what you would spend at Topgolf or whatever, buying drinks and rounds of golf. Go spend that helping a nonprofit get STEM kits out to Title I kids. Like, it can just be such a better ROI of your money and get such a better bang for your buck than just going playing golf and everybody leaves afterwards. This is much more
Yeah,
lasting.
I love that. And I think about the young professionals that are entering our
Mm,
workforce today. I used to work in higher education, and we would always say that college graduates are looking for meaningful work and purposeful work,
mm.
and they're often aligning with an organization's corporate social responsibility policies and looking at that. So what have you seen that it actually does for the people who work for organizations that do good?
I think it adds to a much better retention and employee engagement. So companies, 95% of employees believe that it's important for their employer to make a positive impact in the community. So when companies show up in that way, a person, they may be on the fence about going to another company, but when companies are showing up and giving back to the community, that means something to an employee who cares about that. Think that there's skill-based benefits too, and cross-functional benefits. As you're volunteering side by side, I'm getting to know someone from finance or HR or the IT team, and all of a sudden I now have someone I can collaborate with. That's hugely important for engagement and people staying, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic. It's 87% of employees consider workplace volunteerism as a factor in their decision to stay with an employer and in the region. And it just makes them feel connected to the community, especially here in Charlotte when we have so many transplants, 157 new people coming in. They don't know Charlotte. They may know Philadelphia or New York, but they don't know the fabric of Charlotte. And volunteerism and getting involved with a nonprofit is a great way to understand where Charlotte is excelling and where we're failing, and be part of that solution versus just not feeling connected to the city that they now live in.
And such a great point. I was at a recent event and they were talking about what matters to
Mhm.
employees. And of course, compensation matters, but it's not always the number one in
Mhm.
people's order. Benefits matter, professional development
Mhm.
opportunities matter, the ability to work on meaningful projects or meaningful work matters. And so I think there's this misnomer for organizations that you have to wait until you're big enough or you're profitable enough to give back. And we work with a lot of small to medium-sized companies. Do you think that they have to wait until they're a certain
No.
size to give back?
Not at all. Like, it's, if you wait too long, it's too late at that point. You can start small and very intentional with a lunch and learn. Invite a nonprofit to come speak to the people at lunch, whatever. Organize a small event. But again, just show up and do something consistently. In fact, 76% of CEOs agree that the importance of corporate purpose has increased over the past 5 years. So I think the smart CEOs are getting it, and they're saying we need to embed this in our culture early. So don't wait. No one's expecting gigantic checks or that. They just need people power. They need people sorting cans, taking care of the environment. They need your employees' passions and times. And if you have matching dollars, that's even better, or paid VTO, that's even better, but it doesn't have to be there. You can start small and do what people care about.
I guess a question I would ask for best practices is, there's a one school of thought that the entire company rallies around a particular nonprofit and you have giving days, right? Yeah. And then there's on the other side, another school of thought where you just allocate 8 hours of volunteer time for an employer to give to their employees, and they choose how they want to exercise that. I imagine you see everything across that spectrum. So is there any best practices that you think work well for the small to medium-sized companies?
Again, it's usually somewhere in between. It's somewhere where you're giving employees the freedom to go volunteer with their church, alongside with their families, alongside with their friends, giving them and recognizing them and appreciating them for that time. I see the companies that do that see a higher increase in volunteer hours when they give people the freedom to do what they want. But there's also a magic in coming to rally around a specific nonprofit all in together for something that everyone can get around, whether it's the environment or whatever, animals, something that everyone really can have a heart towards. So I'd say you can't get it wrong necessarily. And if you can do both, that's a win, or just a little bit of each. I think that's nice. But just do one or the other, even.
Just do something,
Just
right?
do something, right? Yeah.
I imagine you have so many heartwarming stories that you've seen in your tenure there at Share Charlotte. Yeah. Can you tell us, was there a moment or a time when doing good came back around in a way that you really weren't expecting the outcome?
I'm going to use Share Charlotte as an example. We were going through a process with our email. We were just seeing some weird things happening there. And I was expressing to a board member who works for Ally, like, this is just such a mystery. I wish we had someone we could talk to about this. She's like, well, I've got a whole marketing team that's been looking for a way to give back. Let me put you in touch. So we ended up talking to like this superstar marketing team that works on email, spent 2 hours with them, gained a ton of insight and information about what that we would pay thousands for that we could never afford. It really changed things. It completely changed the way our emails are performing. And at the end of it, not only do we get the skills and the insights we needed, but we got a nice check for money because they had paid VTO. So that was just a nice surprise. And I think a lot of people don't realize the value that brings, that skill, that insights to a nonprofit is so valuable. And if you've got matching dollars, it's even sweeter, but I would have taken the insights too. So that's just a great example and very recent. So
that's wonderful. You remind me, I served on the board of Aparo, which is a nonprofit that does good work for other nonprofits by harnessing the expertise of IT talent. And what you've just described in your experience is what they do. And I think that's a real testament to volunteerism. Comes in a lot of different ways, and there can have some really meaningful side benefits that go with it. So congrats. That's awesome. I'm looking up here at the clock and realizing we're close on time. If somebody is listening today and they want to start doing something, you said it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum you're on, just do something. What's their first move?
Hopefully go to sharecharlotte.org. We've got an inventory of tons of volunteer opportunities. You can filter by size, you can filter by what you care about. So that could be a first step, to just shop around, take a look and see what's out there. We've got a great inventory of lots of great opportunities. We worked with 23 different companies last year just to coordinate thousands of employees and thousands of volunteer opportunities. So we can be just an easy conduit to that. I'd say if people are interested in taking a step further, learning how corporate volunteerism works best, we're hosting a corporate volunteer summit on September 30th. You can learn more about that at sharecharlotte.org too. So if people are looking of like, what does good look like? What does getting employees out there and best practices, we can help you there too. So lots of ways to get started.
I love that. I love the tangible action items and the dates that you've provided our listeners. Let's get out there. We do a lot of podcasts and we talk conceptually about things that we're doing. And one of the things I love about what you're doing, Melissa, at Share Charlotte is you're actually making a difference in not only the community, but in individuals' lives, and you're doing it in very tangible ways. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, listeners, this has been another edition of Workforce Rewired. You can see that we explore a lot of different topics, many that are just heartwarming, and appreciate Melissa Hovey from Share Charlotte being with us today. Tune in again for another edition of our Workforce Rewired feature in the podcast, and feel free to jump on the calendar and check out sharecharlotte.org as well. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Appreciate it.